Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to Conscious Cafe Global for our presentation this evening with John Quill. I'm delighted to welcome you. My name's Gina Lazenby, and we have a special evening where John is going to talk about what he calls the special ingredient of kindness and adding that consciously to our lives, which is a perfect subject for us. So I don't know about you, but there are times when I can certainly be hard on myself. So I'm actually looking forward to these tips and techniques for taking better care of myself and not giving myself a hard time. John has a very, if you've read on his bio, a very interesting mix of experience. Most recently, he has retired from working as a chaplain in an independent girls' school. And prior to that, he had a wide range of experience as a CEO of 2 charities. He worked as a management consultant and manager in local government, worked in social responsibility. But having started out as an accountant, he soon ordained as a priest and made that shift early in his working life from the worshipping and the honoring of external God and bringing a spirituality inside. And that's been his path for several decades. And even though he's retired now, he seems to be extremely busy working and teaching with mindfulness. So a big welcome to John this evening. We'll give him a Conscious Cafe wave of the hands. I'm going to hand over to you, John, and I'm here at your service, and I know that you're going to, after your introduction, lead us on a little exercise. So I'm here to support you, of course.
That's good, Gina. Thank you very much. Thanks for the welcome. Thank you, everybody. Do you mind if we go back on complete thingy? I'm just seeing me at the moment. I'd like to be able to see everybody, if that's all right, Gina.
Can you press your gallery view?
I want me to do gallery, dear. Okie dokies.
Yeah, and then you've got everybody.
Then I can keep an eye on you all, you see.
Yeah.
Important to keep an eye on
you.
Those of you who are hidden, maybe we could see you as well. That'd be nice too, if possible. So yes, as Gina said, yes, ordained priest. I've moved on from that very significantly now. So don't worry, I'm not going to preach at you. I'm going to share some of my more recent experience, which is through mindfulness. So I'm qualified to teach Mindful Self-Compassion, which is an 8-week course, and some of you, if you're at all inspired tonight, might want to join me on my next course, which starts in next month. I'm also qualified to teach mindfulness to children in school, which I've enjoyed immensely when I was working in the school, teaching youngsters mindfulness, but also using mindfulness in my mentoring and support for pupils, and also parents. And a lot of parents have done the course that I now teach because it helped them as parents to be even better parents. So that's and I've been doing that now for the best part of 8, 9, 10 years. So I'm getting into all that. And it's very nice to be here with you to share some of it. It's been hugely important for me, and I hope some of it might rub off a little bit on some of you tonight and in the future. And if you're watching this afterwards, well, some of this will be quite interactive, and you'll have to make that bit up if you're watching this on the recording. But you'll be able to get in touch with me afterwards if you want. And the same for you who are here. Do feel free afterwards if there's something you want to discuss, ask. You'll be able to get hold of me. Okay, so I'm going to start with a little bit of a practice. Now, I believe you normally start with a bit of a meditation, a quiet time together. So you're used to doing this. I'm just going to introduce the idea of a FOFBOK. Anybody guess what a FOFBOK is? Anybody wave at me and want to tell me what a FOFBOK is? Any ideas? It always sounds slightly rude, doesn't it? The girls at school always used to have a little giggle when I said FOFBOK. So FOFBOK is feet on floor, bum on chair, which is what you're all doing anyway. But I'm inviting you to very consciously sit now with your feet on the floor, your bottom on the chair, using the chair to give you a little bit of support. So it's not, I don't want you all stiff and starchy like that. I don't want you all sort of slumped. You're using the chair for a little bit of support. And if you're comfortable to close your eyes for a few moments, that would be lovely. And just allowing yourself to settle down a little bit. And this is about arriving in the room. And one of the aspects of mindfulness and self-compassion that's very important is to be able to create our own safe space, because in a couple of things we'll do tonight, we're going to go somewhere a little bit more tricky. And it's very important that you know that sitting there, you are in a safe space. So you're in a room, I presume, that's familiar to you. You're supported by the chair, you're supported by the room itself, supported by the other people here, supported by the sound of my voice. So allowing that as much as you can to bring you in, to the room, bring you into being present with me and with the other people here. And using the breath for a little bit as well. I don't particularly want you to change your breathing. I'm inviting you to be aware of your breathing. And one of the lovely things about the breath in this approach to life is that it's always there. It just gets on with the job of breathing. We don't have to worry about it. It just does its thing. So seeing the breath as a friend as well. The breath as a friend who is supporting us as well as the chair, the room, each other. It's safe where we are just now. And I'm not asking you to leave stuff outside, quite the opposite. I'm going to be encouraging you in a moment to look at some stuff that you maybe have brought in with you. So this is not about leaving stuff outside, though it is about being as present and as inside this group as you can be, given we're on Zoom and given we're a long way away from each other. But here we are creating this space. Far the wonders of technology to be with each other for this little while together. And if in the silence you notice your mind is going off somewhere else, if you're worrying about something tomorrow or thinking about something today, that's all part of what we're doing tonight. We're being mindful about this stuff. We're noticing it. We're being conscious about it. So notice when that happens. And then bring yourself back, please, to sitting here, being with the rest of us, enjoying the space. So I'm going to lead us straight into this first little practice I'm offering you this evening. And when we've done the little practice, I'm going to invite you to think of some things, and then Gina's going to pop you into breakout rooms of 3 people in each room, and there'll be just about 5 minutes just for you to check in with each other, what your experience was of the exercise we're going to do. If you want to write stuff down, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. But I am inviting you to stay in your safe space. So we're doing this in a meditative, thoughtful, reflective, kind, gentle way. And while you're in that safe space, I'm inviting you to think about a time when maybe a close friend or maybe a relative, a member of your family, somebody at work perhaps, thinking about a time when somebody was having a hard time, somebody in your life was suffering in some way. Maybe they were ill, or maybe they'd lost a job, or maybe they'd fallen out with a friend. Something tricky, difficult for them was happening. It was sticky stuff. It was tricky stuff. And they were worrying or worked up or anxious about this thing that was going on for them. How do you typically respond to a friend or a member of your family who's in that sort of situation? Just call to mind how you typically respond. You may have a particular example you'd like to think of, maybe just recently if you were with somebody. How do you typically respond to a friend or a member of your family and they're struggling in some way? What do you say to them? What tone of voice do you use when you talk to them? Is there anything physical? Do you reach out if it's appropriate? Do you reach out and hold them in some way? How do you typically respond to a friend or a member of the family who's having a hard time? Just let that sit for a bit and see what comes up. Okay, so we've got a sense now of how you are with other people when they are having a hard time. So now I'd like you, please, to call to mind a time, perhaps a specific time, perhaps more generally, something when you're suffering in some way. Something has gone wrong for you. You're ill, or something's gone wrong at work, or you've had a falling out with somebody else, or something's happened and you are anxious or worried or cross or fed up or whatever it might be. Something has happened to you and you're having a hard time. How do you typically respond to yourself when you're having a hard time? If something is going wrong in your life, what do you typically say to yourself? What do you typically think? What tone of voice do you use when you're talking to yourself? Maybe not out loud, but the tone could be just as much in your head when you're talking to yourself about what's going on. How are you with yourself physically? So really noticing, please, how do you typically respond to yourself when things are going wrong? What do you say? What do you think? How do you say it to yourself? Is there anything physical you do for yourself when you're having a hard time? And so now I'm curious about whether there are any differences between those two scenarios. I'm curious about how you are with somebody else when they're having a hard time, and I'm curious about how you are with yourself when you're having a hard time. So Gina, if you'd be good enough to pop everybody into those little breakout rooms just for 5 minutes, and you don't need to talk about what you're thinking of. This is not about sharing personal information. I'm asking you to share something about if there are differences between how you are with other people to how you are with yourself. So you're talking about the differences or the similarities. I'm not asking you to disclose anything about anything that's going on for you. I'm asking you to discuss with each other for 5 minutes what you notice curiously about any differences or similarities in those scenarios. So Gina, please, when you're ready, pop the folks into those rooms.
I'm going to make 4 rooms. Those of you in a room with John won't be joining, so you could be 2. And John, if we've got 3 people in, should we do 2 minutes each and make it 6 minutes? I give them a warning at 5.
Okay, let's do 6 minutes then. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, 6 minutes.
I give you an alert at 5 and you've got 1 more minute. Okay, 4 rooms. Okay, here we go. Open.
Okay, folks, welcome back from that. We lost somebody en route, but most of you are here. So I'm curious to know if what sort of things came up in your discussions, just for a little while. If you wouldn't mind, there are not many of you. If you could wave, if you got something to say, and I'll invite you in, and then we can see what comes up. So just a bit of a sense. Who's prepared, willing, and able to tell us something about what happened in your room? Anybody out there willing? Give me a wave, Catherine.
So we had a very interesting group. 2 of us fell into the classic category of being lovely to other people, but not so lovely to us. And then one person didn't have that gene. However, I do a lot of personal self-care. I make sure I've got space and time and treat myself and go for walks and all of those things. But it's the negative chatter in my head, exactly as you've said, the way we talk to ourselves. So I'm very critical of myself. I berate myself left, right, and center. So although I think I take care of myself, on a physical level, I do, but it's all in my head.
Okay.
So that's what I'm looking for from tonight.
Thanks, Catherine. Anybody else like to share something from your group? All being shy, are we? Okay. Maxine.
Hang on. Yes, Maxine. Maxine, unmute yourself. You do that? Need the glasses with a button. Okay.
Yeah, there. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, got you.
Yeah, exactly what is it Catherine said? Yeah.
Yeah.
That it's so easy to be kind to other people and listen to their problems and help them in any way you can, but your own self, you get the self-criticism, you're not good enough, you haven't done it well enough, so you tend to treat yourself to food because that's one way of compensating in a way for feeling inadequate and not good enough. Okay. So I agree with what we said in the group.
Thanks, Maxine. So wave at me if that's something that you experience, so that negativity to yourself in a way that you don't necessarily do it to other people. That's some of you at least prepared to admit that. And that's not uncommon. So it's very important in everything I say today to not feel criticized, because we do enough criticism anyway of ourselves. So if I'm making a comment, it's a mindful comment, and it's a curious question, perhaps. It's not a criticism, because it's so easy, isn't it, to go into that critical voice. And mindfulness gives us the tools to help us be aware of that and shift things around. And the kindness, from my perspective, is a really important. It's in mindfulness, but in this approach, we very consciously add kindness as well into the mix. Otherwise, we can forget it and it gets left out. And we can be so busy being mindful, we forget to be kind. But this is about including both the mindfulness and the kindness in things. Is that clear enough? Anybody want to ask anything or say anything at the moment? All good for now. And I do, but it's very important, if I'm saying something and any of you are missing something, or something's not clear, or you want to make a comment, please just wave at me, and as soon as when the moment comes, I'll invite you to say something. So in other words, interrupt if you need to, if you'd like to, because I don't want to just talk away and leave you all somewhere else. So I do need to know what's going on out there. Is that okay? So I am going to talk for a bit now, but as I talk, I'll ask questions if you want to, and also I'll ask you from time to time if you're getting what I'm saying. So I'm going to talk a little bit now just about the way mindfulness works. Now, some of you may know some of this, some of you may not. This is my approach. I'm going to do the Quill version, the John Quill version of what I think mindfulness is about, and the triggers, the stuff that can get us into that place of being critical. So once upon a time, a long time ago, when our ancestors were just emerging from the animal kingdom, they had, as part of their brain, what is called the limbic system. It's also referred to as the reptilian part of the brain. We've still got that. It's sort of back here somewhere. We've still got this very ancient reptilian limbic system. And it's very important to recognize that in evolutionary terms, that evolved, and it evolved in certainly all mammals, probably lots of other types of animal. It evolved in order to keep the animal safe. So the limbic system, the reptilian system, is about safety in a dangerous situation. So as our ancestors were emerging from the animal kingdom and were becoming more conscious about themselves, more conscious about what was going on around them, they still lived in a dangerous situation. They didn't have a nice room at home to sit in like we all have. They couldn't just go down the road to Waitrose or Tesco or Sainsbury's and do the shopping. They had to go out and get it from somewhere. And while somebody was out doing the hunting, whoever was left at home, I'm trying not to say the man went hunting and the woman stayed at home, but it probably was like that back in those days. Whoever went out was in a dangerous situation. Whoever was at home was in a dangerous situation, because home was a cave or a space in the wood or something. So life was dangerous in a way that it's not dangerous in everyday terms as it is for us. And so this limbic system, the reptilian system, evolved the fight-flight mechanism. And crucial to that is a little chappie I'm going to show you here, just for a moment. Crucial to that was this little chappie. Can you see? You should now be able to see a screen that says the amygdala. And I can't now. There we are. Can you see a little screen there? Something got, there he is. There's the amygdala. So now this is an image from the mindfulness program I teach children. So that's why you've got a nice little cartoon character. But actually, it's no bad thing for adults to see this picture as well, because you've got this chappie in your head. It's part of your limbic system. He, she is in there. There's actually two bits. One is on the left, one is on the right, back here. And the amygdala is alive and well in your head, just as it was in the heads of our ancestors all those years ago. It's the oldest part of the brain, as in it evolved a long time ago. And it's also the oldest bit of our brains, because it's the first bit to kind of grow. So as our brains were developing when we were children, the amygdala and this whole limbic system develops first. And that's why teenagers are teenagers, because teenagers are still living with this reactive learning as they go along, reacting sort of world. And the more mammalian bit I'll come back to doesn't finish growing until a youngster is about 20. So many youngsters are very much, well, all youngsters are in this in-between stage. They've got the reptilian bit, they haven't yet got the mammalian bit fully developed. And that's why teenagers behave like teenagers behave. And let's just skip on, not to that one, but to this one. And the amygdala doesn't think. The amygdala's job is to react. So we've got fight, flight, and freeze. And you'll all be very familiar with those ideas: fight, flight, freeze. And that is where we need to start, because that is where things can both go very, very right, but also can go very, very wrong. So, for instance, if you're walking down the road and a car comes thundering towards you because the driver's lost control, this is exactly the time that your amygdala needs to do something, because your amygdala's job is not at that point to ask you to sit and have a moment like we had at the beginning and have a little reflection. If you do that, you'll be dead. So you are now in a dangerous situation, and the amygdala's job says, run. And that's what you do. You have to run, because otherwise that car's going to hit you and you're going to end up dead. So a dangerous situation is absolutely where the amygdala and this bit of the brain is important still to us. Is that making sense? Is that clear what I'm saying so far? Are we all good with that bit? So that's why it's there. That's why it stayed there in all the years since those early cave people evolved in the way they did. So evolution moves on several hundreds and thousands of years, no doubt. I'm not sure of the maths of it all, but I do know that as the mammalian brain developed, we got apparently more sophisticated. So this front of the brain starts to develop. This front bit, the prefrontal cortex, develops, which is like the orchestra. It's holding the orchestra together. It's conscious. It's mindful. It can reflect on things. It thinks about things. It prepares things. It's much more conscious and mammalian and human. And as I was saying earlier about children, they don't actually get that bit fully developed until they're about 20. So they're adults legally, and their brain is still developing in terms of this more sophisticated prefrontal cortex and the conscious bit of the brain. So that's evolved over the last X thousand years, and so we have these brains that we've got today. I mean, you've all got one, and that's all very good. And here we are talking about our brain. However, while this bit was evolving, this bit was not unevolving, and because we still need this bit. So this bit is still alive and well. And the dear old amygdala, I like to think of the amygdala, but while the amygdala is part of my brain and part of your brain, I like to think of the amygdala as being a little bit separate as well. So it's almost as if in your brain you've got this little chappy called the amygdala, and then its job is to look out for you from a danger point of view. And most of the time, you're not in a dangerous situation. So the dear old amygdala doesn't actually quite know what to do sometimes. It's kind of sitting there looking for danger. So even though it's even sitting in your room right now, it's not dangerous, your amygdala is still looking for work. It's what it does. So I don't know about you guys, but for instance, as I look at the screen, I'm seeing various expressions on your various faces. Some of you bluntly are looking a bit bored. Some of you looking quite interested. Some of you are looking a bit tired. Now, my amygdala is looking out at your faces just the same as I am. And while none of you are going to hurt me, you're not going to leap out of my screen and thump me. So it's not dangerous. So my amygdala goes into a different mode of operation. My amygdala says, okay, now she's looking particularly bored. Oh my goodness, you must be getting it all wrong. To me, it's telling me off immediately for getting it wrong because you're looking bored. Or Val, you're just smiling. So Val is now smiling. So my amygdala is now thinking, oh, that's good. I've got Val engaged. Nobody else seems to be very happy. Oh yeah, Christina's smiling now. That's good. Oh, Maxine's smiling. Well, good. I've got it right now this time round. But then as soon as you guys stop smiling, my amygdala is going to look out again and say, oh, now what are you doing wrong? And it's already telling me off. It's the critic. My critic is alive, even though I know this stuff and I'm quite confident in it and I teach it a lot and I know people get a lot from it. It doesn't stop the amygdala still looking out your faces and say, you know what, you're getting it wrong again. Or the other way it'll work is say, oh no, that so-and-so out there is looking a bit bored. Well, she's not any good at doing this, is she? She's not concentrating. She's not paying attention. And so my amygdala takes me into fight mode with you. And again, I'm not going to jump out of the screen and attack you. This is not a dangerous thing. But my amygdala can take me into that place as well. So in other words, I'm fighting either I'm fighting by blaming you for not paying attention and not being in the room with me enough, and why have you bothered to come in the first place? Or I'm fighting myself because I'm saying to myself, well, you're obviously getting it wrong because nobody's paying any attention. Is that making sense? Is that something you guys are getting? What, you're getting the point I'm making there? So the amygdala is hard at work. It can't do what it was originally evolved for because it's not dangerous right now, but it is hard at work noticing all this stuff. And it can trigger very quickly into the self-critic that some of you were referring to when we did the first exercise. Any questions or comments at all at that point before I move on to the next bit? Anybody want to ask anything or say? Val?
Just that it's lovely, the sort of personification of this thing as the amygdala, imagining it as a thing alive and in my head, and its tendency wanting to do this all the time.
Yep.
It's a very, really useful visual kind of clue. Yeah.
Thank you. That's good. And it is. That's why I like to think of it as being, you know, a bit, it's in there, but it's a bit separate. It's a bit of me. It's not all of me. It's a bit of me. Anybody else want to ask anything or say anything at the moment? Yeah, Christina.
Is there a way to manage that?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
Is that what we're going to talk about? Okay.
Hold that thought.
Okay.
Though I'm not going to use the word manage. So I'm going to come back to that. I won't be using the word manage, but yeah, absolutely. We're going to move into that. Anything else at the moment, just in terms of what I've been saying so far? Is that all good? We're getting it. Okay. Now, when it's an animal we're talking about, say it's an antelope or something out in the wilds, they live in dangerous situations because any minute now a lion might turn up and try and kill and eat the antelope or whatever it might be. So animals need the amygdala all the time. So the amygdala busily looks out what's going on, and then it notices a lion is coming up, and so it says to the antelope or whoever it might be, "Fly hell." And if the antelope's lucky, the antelope will run, or whatever it might be, will run hard enough and fast enough that they'll avoid the danger of the lion. They'll just run away. They won't normally fight it in that situation. Some animals will come out fighting. In the case I'm using as I say, an antelope or something, or a deer, they'll just run away. And when it's gone, when the danger is past, the deer or the antelope or whatever it is just gets on with life as if nothing's happened. It goes back to eating its grass and doing whatever antelopes and deers do. They just don't know that anything much has happened. They go back into a very, very unconscious place. And then the next time a lion comes along, the amygdala wakes up again and says, "There you go, lion, run," and off they go. And then when it's over and done with, they settle down, they back to eating their grass, life's over. Now, this is where we have a problem in our heads, because our conscious bit here doesn't need the amygdala's signals in quite the same way because we're not in that dangerous situation. But then it's got something a bit extra to think about, because say I really was triggered tonight and I was picturing one of you and I'm really getting the picture that you're not paying any attention. I go deeply into a place of I'm getting it wrong. After the call, when we finish, I could easily sit here and be saying to myself, "Oh my God, I got that so wrong. Oh, I wish I'd done it differently. Oh, if I'd said so-and-so, so-and-so, if only I'd done that." In other words, I go into a ruminating place. I ruminate, I cogitate, I worry, I think, I don't sleep, I worry some more. I wake up the next day, I worry some more. See how it happens, all kicks off like that. Or I could equally end up in a sort of space which is, well, I don't know what they're on about. Why are they even bothering to turn up? They don't deserve me. So I go into much more of a fight, and that can go round and round in my head. And so it can keep going. And so a very big thing that happens in the human brain is we catastrophize. Something happens, we worry about it, we think about it, we ruminate about it, we catastrophize about it. And so it's something really quite simple that I may or may not have done wrong, turns into a major incident in my head. And the story I tell myself is one of complete disaster. So that's another bit of this we need to pay attention to, the potential we have to make things, to think things worse. And going back to the youngsters I was mentioning earlier at school, the number of stories I'd hear from a teenager about what was going on. Somebody down here, Shock, who says I do that a lot. I think we all do that, at least to some extent. That the child would sit with me and they're worried about worrying. for instance, and if an exam's coming, they'll be worried. And I'll say, of course you're worried. You've got an exam to do. You're bound to be worried. It's quite normal to be worried. But the child is worrying about worrying. And I bet some of you worry about worrying. I mean, go into an even worse place, which is about, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Oh my goodness, I'm such an awful person. So see how it can all kick off. I think I'm getting a few nods and things from you. So I think this is not unfamiliar, is it? Not unfamiliar. This is what we do. And this is being human. But we can so easily go into a place of complete negativity. Again, any more questions, comments at that point? Good so far. And I am laboring this a bit because it's only by paying attention to this thing that happens that we can do anything about it. I'm not going to use the word managing, Christina, but I'm going to give you some ideas in a bit about how to deal with it. But it's only if we can see it, recognize it, be mindful of it, that we can do anything about it. That's why I'm laboring this a bit.
Okay, I really get the catastrophizing thing.
Sorry, Val?
I really get the catastrophizing.
Yeah.
I've been trying to sell a house for a year, and at times when it goes wrong, I think, I'll never sell this house. Well, that's bizarre. Of course I will sell the house. But the catastrophizing thoughts go into some very strange places.
And do you ever, Val, think what's wrong with me? Or something like that?
What have I forgotten? What have I not done? What should I have done better? Those sort of things.
Those sort of things around. Yeah, that's great. So again, it's perfectly natural to be worried. It's a big thing to sell a house, but you worry, you think, oh, off we go, round and round in circles. Yeah. Okay. Now, one of the reasons I'm not going to use the word managing is really that this is a tricky bit. The amygdala, and I like to think there's all sorts of different bits and bobs up here. There are lots of different bits up here. And there are times when they can be very contradictory. The amygdala is your friend. The amygdala's job is to keep you safe. The amygdala's job is to do what the amygdala does. It's not the amygdala's fault that it might get triggered by a look or expression, because that's the amygdala's job. The amygdala is here to help you. But it very often comes over as critical, because the amygdala does its job, triggers you into noticing something's going on. Oh dear, fight, flight, freeze. The mind worries about it. And before we know where we are, we're into that critical state. Go away, amygdala. You could easily, now I've told you about the amygdala, you could easily go to a place of, whenever you notice it's happening, go away, amygdala. I don't want you to be here. Go away, stop. And then we're criticizing the amygdala. And the more the amygdala is criticized, I promise you, the more it will come back, because its job is to keep you safe. And the more agitated you get, the more the amygdala will say, come on, I'm here. I'm helping you. I'm helping you, for God's sake. I was talking to a bloke just this morning who's done a course with me and who I'm mentoring after doing the course. And part of this is very physical. So when you get wound up about something, you probably get some sort of pain in your chest, perhaps, or you might get butterflies in your tummy. Do people recognize that sort of thing? Pain in the chest, butterflies in the tummy, maybe a head spin, very physical. And when I realized, talking to this bloke this morning, that when he gets that, what he called a jolt, he immediately sees that as an enemy. The jolt is the enemy. And in his case, he gets ashamed. Why am I feeling this jolt? I shouldn't feel this jolt. So the enemy comes along. It all comes an enemy. And he's into fight mode or manage mode. But actually, the amygdala and all these bits of us are trying to be helpful. And as soon as we say, go away, they're going to push back. So here's I'm holding this is a Pinterest shot. So the more I tell, this is the amygdala, the more I tell it to go away, the more it'll push in, because from the amygdala's point of view, it wants to sort me out. And before we know where we are, it's taken over. And I kind of disappear into the experience. This is what can happen at its most extreme. I tell it to go away. It doesn't go away because it wants to do the job that it's doing, and it comes and more and overwhelms me. And that's when a person go into complete meltdown, nervous breakdowns, illness, trauma, all that stuff can kick in because the emotion and the body sensation takes over. And before the person knows where they are, they're kind of lost. And while none of you may have been in that particular situation, perhaps you have, even the beginning, the inkling, the beginning of it is still the sort of stuff that can lead us to be very mentally unstable. It's all part of our well-being. if we're not aware of this stuff, our well-being suffers, and then we get crotchety or withdrawn or whatever, and so on and so forth. So the amygdala is our friend, and this is where the kindness bit starts to kick in, because we need to respect the amygdala as a friend and not see it as the enemy. And so I'm going to show you a little video now, which is you'll probably say to yourselves afterwards, what do you mean, why is he showing us that? But just go with the flow. Have a look at my little video, please. And then again, after that, Gina will pop us back into our breakout rooms again, just for a few minutes, just to reflect a bit on what came up for you while I was showing the video. Okay, so that's what we're going to do now. So let me just get my screen sharing. Somebody's left and apologize. That's good. I'm going to click on here and share. And then you've got a fairly blank screen at the moment. Is that right? Wave at me, somebody. Yep, good. So I'm going to click the play button, and you should be able to see and hear something now. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Good. You hear that?
Yeah.
Good. Right. So watch this, please. So without more ado, let's pop them into breakout rooms, please, Gina. Just talk to each other for a few minutes about what was going on there for you. What did you notice? What was going on? And then we'll talk about that a bit. So off we go, please.
Yeah. We're all back.
Okay. So anybody like to offer anything from your discussions just now? Anybody got any reflections just to offer us all? Anybody? No?
I thought the video.
Yes, Sean. I saw Sean's hand, and then Catherine.
Catherine
Sean?
speaking, and then we'll have Sean. Yeah.
Okay.
I thought the video really illustrated it, fantastically well. That's exactly how my mind goes with all those flies buzzing around. It just goes round and round and round and round and round. And then when you finally come out the other end, however you get there, to see it all as blossom was just, it's like, yeah, what was all the problem about? So I thought the video was very good. And we were just saying, how do you not get dragged into all of that thing? So looking forward to that answer.
Okay, it'll come. Sure.
Right, Sean, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it was just going on from the idea that like negative thinking, I call it stinking thinking, obsessive thinking can be, I can see that as an enemy, you know, enemy type thinking. And you know, we're trying to look at the fly as an enemy almost in the movie as a state of mind, and trying to find a way of befriending that fly. Yeah, and I guess, yeah, the emotions or thoughts that come up, liabilities as I call them, you know, if I have kind of some sort of lust or something comes up in my heart and mind, and I think, okay, that's the enemy. I need to kind of squash that, and that's right. And I'd probably by doing that, I'm probably making it a bit more difficult for myself. But it's quite difficult when it comes to sort of certain things that are ambiguous, you know, whether is it a friend, is it an enemy, you know, because things come up in our consciousness. So yeah, it's just trying to, I think it takes a bit of wisdom as well, but yeah, rather than fighting the thoughts, learn to allow them to go through one ear and out the other. But yeah, easier said than done.
Thanks, Sean. So that's exactly what happens. So in that case, it was just a little fly. Just a teeny weeny little fly buzzing around, not doing anybody any harm. But before we know where we are, it becomes the enemy. But actually, what then happened was he made things worse for himself. The more he tried to fight off the fly, the damn thing just kept coming back, and there was more and there was more. So the more he resists, there's a whole bit of this we haven't got time for tonight. That is, the more we resist something, the more we make it worse for ourselves. And so somewhere in all that, he learned to just let the fly be there and didn't have to feel the need to fight all the time. Now, this is a very simple concept. And when I'm teaching the course, somebody will, at some point, somebody will say, oh, it's really quite simple, isn't it? And actually, it is very simple as a concept, but it's very, very difficult to put into practice because we are all used to the other way of doing things. The amygdala kicks in because that's its job. And off we go, and we're into the fight flight thing, and then we're self-blaming or blaming somebody else, and so on and so forth. So I've got half an hour, and I'm not going to give you all the answers in half an hour, but I'm going to give you a couple of I'm going to tell you a story in a moment, and then I'm going to take you into another practice, which will be, I hope, helpful. And without sounding too brazen about it, if you want to do more, come and do the course, because the course takes 8 weeks, and it does so for a reason, because it gives us the chance to practice a number of techniques and learn how to put this into practice. So I'm not going to give you the answers in half an hour now, but I'm going to give you a flavor, and then you do need to, it doesn't have to be with me, but take the course, or you'll find many more resources to how to deal with this stuff. So once upon a time,
Is it Zoom or in person, the course?
Zoom, because I've discovered that Zoom works really well for mindful self-compassion, because A, we can get you from all over the place, and B, you're in a safe space. So although we go into difficult places, you're at home. So it's a very safe space to go into difficult places. So it's all on Zoom, which I enjoy more than I realized. Once upon a time, there was a couple called, let's call them Brian and Liz. And they were in their 60s, and they'd been together for a long time, best part of 40 years, and they're a really happy couple. They loved being with each other. They loved each other very much, and they were planning what they were going to do. They're both now retired. They'd left work. They're both planning what they were going to do together, and they were looking forward to all sorts of things. And one day Liz wakes up and she's not feeling very well, so they toddle off to the doctor, and they're still chatting on the way to the doctor about what they're going to do next week and next month and all these ideas. So off they go to the doctor. And a week later, they come back from the hospital. And the doctor sent Liz to the hospital straight away, and she has all sorts of tests and things in the hospital. And they end up telling her that she has got terminal cancer and she will be dead by Christmas. So they've gone in a moment from looking forward to retirement together and another 20, 30 years together. They've gone from that to nothing. So they come home, and this is erupted into their life. There's nothing they can do about it. It is what it is. And Bill, did I call him Bill? I think I called him Bill. Bill is completely stuck, and he looks out at the garden and he thinks, God, that's not very tidy, is that garden? So Bill takes himself off into the garden, and Bill gardens. He cuts the grass. He cuts the grass again. He cuts the grass again. So there's almost no grass left by the time he's finished. He prunes like there's no stopping to pruning. He prunes the roses, he prunes the bushes, he puts some slabs down because he thinks the garden looks a bit untidy, so he covers up the ground with slabs and puts stones down. And as November turns into December, the garden is incredibly neat. Couldn't have a neater garden. And then Liz dies, and Bill comes home, and he's by himself, and he's lost, and he's bereft, and he just sits there in his house alone. And if it wasn't for his child and the neighbours, he would just sit there and die. But they come along and they give him some food, and they encourage him to get up, and they give him meals, and he's still alive, but he's not really alive. He's just living a sort of death life because his love of his life is not there anymore. So January moves into February, and February moves into March, and he's sitting gazing forlornly out the window, out into this garden, and then he looks again. He sees, actually, this garden is not quite as neat as I left it. It was pristine when I left it. He thinks to himself, but look, there's plants growing, and the lawn's growing, and oh, there's colour over there. What's going on? So he goes out to the garden, and he finds these things are growing, and then he takes himself into the shed. And sitting on top of his wheelbarrow, where he can't miss it, is an envelope. And in the envelope is a card. And it's from Liz. And it says, "Darling Bill, thank you so much for doing all that you did in the last few months we were together. Thank you so much for looking after the garden as you did. I really treasure the way you were looking after me by looking after the garden. Thank you so much. However, Bill, I loved you and I love everything you did. But the garden needs a bit of a different approach to it. So when you were in bed asleep at night, Bill, I took myself out to the garden every so often at night, and I sowed some seeds, and I planted some flowers just where you wouldn't see them. And I just did a little bit of tinkering around the edges. And you're now seeing the benefit of that, Bill. And you wouldn't be reading this if you weren't out now in the garden, seeing what I did. And I hope you'll enjoy the garden now for being what the garden is, with its flowers and its natural way of being. Please look after it in that way. And thank you so much. And I love you forever." And back to my word managing now. So Christina, who seems to have disappeared for a moment, used the word manage. Now, Bill, now you might want to call this as a typical male reaction, and perhaps it is, but I don't think it's only men that do this. Bill got into control mode. Bill needed to manage his feelings, and he managed his feelings by managing the garden. He did all he could to control that garden and make it pristine in his best way that he could. Liz, on the other hand, accepted the diagnosis and the prognosis. She accepted she was dying, and she recognized that Bill was doing his best, but she also wanted to offer Bill something different. And so she goes out at night and tends the garden lovingly. Again, is that a typical female reaction? Possibly. Mothers, babies, nature, women, you do understand some of that in a different way to us men. But again, it's not just a female reaction. I think we all do both. There's a part of us that wants to control, manage, keep things tight, and there's part of us that is much more relaxed about it all. And that's the bit we need to access. So it's not a male-female thing, but it's back to other parts, different parts going on in our heads. We have all these different voices, and that's okay. And sometimes the more negative, controlling, managing voice says, let's get on and manage this situation. And what we need instead is to be more able to see what's going on for what it is. Nothing they could do. They couldn't fix things for Liz. So what they could do, so he tries to control it, she accepts it. In the end, he gets the blessing of her thanks. Remember what I said earlier, it's so important to thank what's going on. He gets her thanks, but he also gets the blessing that she's tended the garden for him while he wasn't looking. And he has a happier life than he would otherwise have had. Still misses her, but he gets on with his life. So I hope the story means something to you along those lines, as that desire to control and make things better. And there's a different approach to this, which is about accepting, allowing things to be as they are, and then adapting to that, being more mindful, being more kind, And that's what Liz was doing. Liz was doing the kind bit, taking care of Bill by taking care of the garden. So we're going to do a practice now, which will be a mindful going into yourself practice, which I hope will give you a bit more of an insight into this. So I'm inviting you now to go back to my Fofbok, feet on floor, please, bum on chair, sitting yourself so that you're reasonably upright and steady, but you're not too stiff and you're not slumping. You're just being present with yourself. And I don't know how you're reacting. I've got no idea what's going on for each of you. So be curious as you turn inwards for a few minutes. Be curious about what's going on for you, and what your reaction was to the story, what your reaction is to what I'm saying. Be curious. If you're noticing resistance, be curious about the resistance. If you're accepting it and loving it, be curious about that. We really are in the realm of not being right and not being wrong. We're in the realm of allowing things to be as they are and seeing what we can learn from them. So with that in mind, I'd like you, please, to think about a behavior of yours. Think about a behavior of yours that you would like to change. Think about a behavior that you don't like particularly about yourself. Please don't go into a death story or something really deep and meaningful. Please don't go there. Go to something comparatively lighter. It may be something about you eat too much, or you don't exercise enough, or something you can do something about, some aspect of your life, some aspect of your behavior that you really don't like very much. So call that to mind, this aspect of your behavior. So this is not about something you can't do anything about. This is not about how you look or an illness, or this is about behavior, something you do. And call it to mind, this behavior of yours. And as you think about this behavior, what do you typically, this is like the first exercise I did, what do you typically say to yourself when you find yourself engaging in this behavior? How does your self-critic show up? What does your self-critic say to you? What tone of voice does your self-critic use when they are telling you off about this behavior? What are the words? What's the tone? And if there aren't any words, there may be a sort of feeling of judgment. Your critic is judging you for doing this thing again. How does self-criticism express itself to you? It's a bit like that fly. It's buzzing in, it's buzzing around. You can't get rid of it. What does it say to you? Now, there's a bit of a leap now, because I'm going to invite you to do your best to turn towards the critic. Your instincts may well be to turn away from it, to try to ignore it or to get beaten down by it. See if you can turn towards the critic, this critical voice, and see if you can be curious. Because this critical voice of yours is trying to be helpful. It may not be doing it very well, but this critical voice, like the amygdala, is trying to be helpful, wants the best for you. So try, if you can, look with curiosity at what's going on from the critic's perspective. What is the message, what is the positive message that is tucked away within the criticism of the critic? Is there one? There may, some of these things, there's nothing obvious, there's nothing clear, but there may be something tucked away in what the critic is trying to say to you that actually is helpful if you'll let it in. So see if you can find some glimmer of what the critic is trying to offer you. And now that you've had a go at asking the critic or looking into what the critic's saying, I'd like you to turn your attention now to another voice in your head. And this voice gets lost very often because the critic is very loud. So somewhere in your head will be a kinder voice. Somewhere in your head will be a gentler voice. And this voice also wants you to change your behavior. This voice recognizes that this behavior is not good for you. This voice wants you to change as well. So its motivation is the same. The critic wants you to change, the kinder voice wants you to change. But this kind of voice says it in a kind way. So you're back to the behavior. Turn towards the kind voice, the compassionate voice, and open your mind and open your heart to what that voice might be saying to you about the behavior. It'll be more of an invitation. It won't be a telling off. And this voice, this aspect of you wants the very best for you. The critic wants the best for you. This voice wants the best for you. And the way it does it is in a much kinder and gentler way. So let's see if you can find something redeeming, something positive from this voice that is really helpful for you. And as well as the words, we're going to add in something physical to finish this exercise. I'm going to invite you to put your hand on your heart space. You may feel I know you might feel a bit odd, but I'm inviting you to put your hand on your heart space. Gently, you're not pressing. This is not a push. This is a gentle hold. So those of you who are parents, when your child was younger, you can't fix their illness, but you can put a hand on their head or their chest and you can say loving words to the child. So I'm inviting you, this is what I call the meditation equivalent of a cuddle. I'm inviting you to give yourself a cuddle. Very gently putting your hands there, breathing in the kind words from your kind voice, giving yourself this gentle cuddle, maybe a little stroke. This opens up the more positive hormones and things in our body, oxytocin and the good stuff. So just as if you were having a cuddle from somebody else, this does the same thing. It releases the oxytocin, the positive hormones, the feel-good factor. So you're giving yourself a bit of a cuddle. You're allowing the kind voice to address the behavior. With any luck in the following wind, you'll be able to take in the advice of this kind voice in a way that you would push away the criticism of the negative voice. So letting that go gently now, just allowing yourself just to relax a bit more back into the room, opening your eyes if you've got them closed. And I think I'll just illustrate that in one more way, and then before we finish, ask you if there's any more final questions and things. But I just want to illustrate that in one more way, if you would persevere with me. And what I'd like to do now, if you would, is put your hands somewhere where we can all see them. And I'd like to just clench your fists for me. Clench your fists and do it quite hard. Do it quite hard. Now, this is like the bloke with a fly. This is the bloke doing his best to get rid of the fly. And the more you press, the harder it will get. So let go and let your hands go like that. Let's do that again. This is the critical voice. This is the telling off. This is the, I don't want the fly to be in my face. Go away, fly, go away, go away, go away. It gets worse and worse and worse. So let go and do that. So that is Mindfulness, that is noticing what's going on, and instead of instinctively going to that, it's bringing yourself to that. And then if you just turn your hands a little bit together like that and reach out, this is what I call common humanity, because there's 12 of us on this screen at the moment, 12 having, you've just been thinking about 12 different things, but I bet you're all thinking about something that you criticize yourself for. And actually, we're all in this together. But when we go into critical space, we tend to close down. We tend to go inwards. We go isolated. So this is reaching out to each other. And then the final piece, which is where it all starts, is this. Put your hands together and go back to your heart space. And that's why we call this mindful self-compassion. Because the more you can learn to be compassionate with yourself, the more you'll be compassionate with other people, the more you'll be able to look out for yourself and other people. The less the fly will bother you, because you'll be able to look at that fly and say, oh, that's a fly. Never mind. And the fly, in that sense, you can let go now when you're ready. The fly, in this sense, represents anything. So it could be the death of Liz in my story, or it could be an irritation in the shops tomorrow. The fly represents this stuff that happens to us, that we end up either criticizing the other person, or more likely we criticize ourselves because we've got it wrong. The critic comes in, tells us off. And so the big invitation to you, this is why this is not about managing. Christina's not here, but this is back to my answer to her question. We're not trying to manage this. We're not trying to control this. We're allowing it to happen. And by allowing it to happen, paradoxically, we can change it. Any immediate comments or questions or reflections from anybody about all that?
John, I did love the strong image of a fly versus cherry blossom. You know, am I got a fly around me in my head, whatever, or having been to Japan and experienced the cherry blossom there, am I just in the cherry blossom moment? So it's a nice, strong visual for me to take away, and
good.
Another piece of theory to try and remember.
Good.
Strong visual.
And that's lovely. The only snag with that is it won't again be that easy to do, because the fly is still a fly, and in our real world and not the world of animation, the fly is not going to suddenly transform into a cherry blossom. However, the way to get to the cherry blossom is to let go of the reaction to the fly. That way you will find the cherry blossom, but it won't be instant and it won't be quick. That's where we need to practice and practice and practice some more. And that's why the course is an 8-week thing and not a 90-minute thing on a Wednesday night. Any other comments or reflections from anybody?
We've got a cat here, or a wild animal.
We've got several cats. I've noticed a few cats roaming around. Yes, I've decided not to be cross about it. And I've decided not to get wound up about the cats. The cats are just a cat.
We can learn a lot from cats, can't we?
We can learn a lot from cats.
They're very zen.
They're very zen. They're very zen. That's right. And you know what? This for me is not one of the things I love about this. Is it shoku? Shuku. One of the things I love about this is I'm actually not trying to get to where that Zen person in the animation got to. I wanted to, when I was younger, I wanted to be this serene older man that everybody would come to sit at my feet and they'd say, oh, is John such a wonderful person? Oh, he's so serene all the time. He's so Zen, like the cat. I've given up on that one. I can't quite do that. But you know what? The more I've let go of trying to become Zen, the more people come and talk to me now. They do my course, they come and talk to me, not because I think I've got somewhere up here, but because I've got something very deep down here. And just this morning, I was telling somebody else, just this morning, I was completely triggered by something that was going on. I don't need to go into the story. I was in there. My anger was up. My fly was in my face. But the difference is, whereas before I'd have tried to fight it off, or I'd have given into it, and I'd have been rude to the person on the phone, whatever. Now I'm able to say, okay, it's happening. So we're not stopping the thing. Bill and Liz couldn't stop her dying. We can't stop the fly coming in when the spring starts coming back and the flies start. We can't stop that, but we can have a different relationship with whatever the it is. And that partly goes back, Sean, to your question earlier as well. It's that we're not trying to, I can't remember exactly what you said, but the reaction is to lash out and fight it off, and that's not going to work. Or we try and fight ourselves with the critic, that's not going to work. But what we can do is allow it to be there. And then what the course goes into in much more depth is how we can allow stuff to be there and change as well, because we're changing our relationship. It's like we're going from that to that to that to that. And that's the circle we go back into instead of the constant bish bash. Doing anything? Any other comments or questions from anybody?
What are people going to take away?
Val's unmuted.
Yeah, I think a lot of the imagery of the fist and the hands and the heart and the flies and blossom, not a very powerful imagery, I think. And for you explaining it with such clarity. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
I think for me, remembering that the amygdala is a friend, not an enemy, not a foe. It is trying to help you. It's not going about it the right way, but it is trying to help, I think, and turning more to that, the gentler voice. I think I'm going to definitely take that away.
Good, thank you. Great.
Thank you.
Yes, it's another view, isn't it? To not think I'm hampered by this old bit of brain that's not developed, and to think of it as the friend, the reframe. Yeah.
There's an approach to all this. It's called Family Systems, I think it's called, and there's a book called No Bad Parts, and it takes this a very similar approach to this. It recognises these different. So there's the stuff we were born with that we inherited through the genes from mum and dad. There's the stuff we were raised with. There were the messages we got given when we were growing up. You should do this. You shouldn't do that. You've got to do this. You do that. Blah, 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 and we carry those messages around with us. And again, all those things are trying to be in their way now. They learn what they need to learn, and then they try and help us. But again, the way they do it is very critical. They bash away at us. You've done it again, you silly bugger, blah 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 blah. So what were the no bad parts remind us of is that it's all trying to be helpful. So let's have a relationship with the stuff, even when it's feeling very negative. That's where the critical voice gives you the chance to turn toward. Well, you turn towards it first, and you say, "What are you trying to teach me now? What's the learning?" It can be the same with emotions. A big emotion comes rushing in. You don't actually become angry. There's anger. What has the anger got to teach me just now? What can I learn from this anger that's around? What can I learn from this grief? What can I learn from the fear? So it can all be a learning, and the key word for that is curious. So when you're doing shoku, for instance, shuku, when you're turning towards the amygdala, the way we just did, be curious as well. Be curious about what's going on here that I can learn.
John, can we have the link for where people would go and find out more?
Yes, it all went out, but yes, you want me to put it in the chat if I can quickly do it. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment.
Maybe we could just go around, since there's only 12 of us, and just give a word for how you feel now, or what you're taking away. Just go around. I'll start with Nick. I go around my clock. Just a word or a phrase for how you feel.
Yeah, kinder towards myself and others.
Lovely, thank you. Maxine?
It's brought me back to mindfulness again.
Laurel? You're muted. You said something, but I didn't get the word.
I said thank you.
Lovely. Sean?
I'm grateful to be able to listen and learn a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine?
Oh, it's gone.
I think for me, the practical tip, I know John was saying, don't think about the fly, but that is the trigger that will make me think about it to allow me to be kinder. So it's the practical for me. Thank you.
And actually, I do want you to think about the fly, but instead of the fly being the enemy, think about the fly
exactly.
that's
yeah.
And Janiki, if I pronounced your name wrong, your word or phrase.
self-compassion to help continue to share compassion.
Lovely, thank you. Azar, are you sharing with us?
Yes. I think it acknowledges it's okay to be kind to yourself without feeling guilty. I hear a lot when people say, oh, I watched TV this afternoon. I just did nothing, but I feel so guilty. I said, what is that guilt from? Why you feel guilty? You deserved it. You work hard. You did what you need to do, your human duties. It's okay to just do nothing or watch TV or whatever you want to do. It's okay to be kind to yourself. I think it takes a lot of gaining confidence. Some people are not very confident in trusting themselves that they actually deserve better and they can be kind to themselves.
Lovely, thanks, Azar. It's okay. Judy?
I'm thinking of the word gentle, because we need to live in a more gentle world, gentle with ourselves, gentle with one another.
Lovely. Val?
Yeah, took my word, gentleness. Yeah.
Shoku?
I think 2 words, curious and compassion. Be more curious.
Lovely, lovely. Well, as we move to a close, if nobody has any more questions, I just, excuse me, frog in my throat now. John, thank you. Thank you for a gentle, kind and compassionate evening.
You're welcome.
And I think we can all feel this lovely energy here. What people are taking away in those practical tips. So Conscious Cafe, Wave, and
thank you kindly. I popped my email and the website. It's not a very grand website, but at least you've got some stuff. And then I can also, if you email me, I can send you links. And if any of you want to email me and say, can we talk, please do. We can set up a conversation. Whatever it says on the website about the money, I never want money to be a problem. So if you want to do the course but money is an issue, talk to me about it and we'll see what we can arrange.
Lovely. That's very kind. Lovely. Thank you. And Judy, is there another event that we want to share with people for Conscious Cafe?
We've got an event coming in 2 weeks. It's on the website and it's with Anne Jones, and she'll be talking about the 5th dimension, which is a time when when all of us will have the opportunity to live with a different vibration. So have a look at the flyer on our website, www.consciouscafe.org, and hopefully you'll want to come along and have a really interesting experience, a really mind-expanding way of looking at the future for all of us.
Judy, wonderful, wonderful. So I'm just going to put the gallery view on here. And I'm going to say thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us and being part of this lovely exploration this evening.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.